The next subject of Pantheon documentation here to get the TLDR treatment is our hook system that we call Quicksilver. And I'll start right here in the middle of this section to get to the essence of this too long didn't read segment. When you, the web development team working on Pantheon, do certain actions like deploying code or cloning a database from one environment to another, there's a decent chance that you'll want to always do certain follow-up actions. For instance, perhaps every time you deploy code to the live environment, you also want to tell your coworkers in a Slack channel that the deployment to this site in this live environment has happened. Now, I have manually done that plenty of times in my career. Can't we just do that automatically anytime there's a deployment? Well, yes, of course we can. We can do it for these events. Autopilot, when the visual regression tests run, when we clear caches, when we clone a database from one environment to another, when we create cloud development environment, a long way of saying making a multi-dev environment for per Git branch development. When you deploy code to your test or live environment, that's another opportunity to tell Quicksilver. When you deploy a product, aka creating a whole new site. That's useful if you're a university or another large organization making new sites on a regular basis. And sync code, which is the code you push to Pantheon's Git repository, syncing with the application container, running the site in a dev or multi-dev environment, kind of like the deployment event. To use these hooks, let's go back to the beginning of this documentation section. You drop some boilerplate in your pantheon.yaml file. In the example I was mentioning before, we have this Slack deploy notification script. We want to notify a Slack channel about a deployment, and we do that after the deployment event. We could flip this after to before, but then we'd be notifying the Slack channel right before the deployment is happening, and in this case, you probably do want after. Other details here, the code that does this Slack notification is simply a PHP script. All of these scripts are PHP. This description will show up in your logs. This example and others can be found and copy-pasted from this GitHub repository of examples. There's the drush config import example that I personally added back in 2016 in the modern Drupal era that was sweeping across after the release of Drupal 8. Plenty of other examples here too. When you add scripts to your own site, or even if you are writing scripts, we recommend putting them here in this private directory. That'll ensure that no traffic from the outside world will hit these PHP scripts. When Pantheon's infrastructure hits these scripts, it does so as a post request, and that post request carries a number of variables in it. So if you want to craft that Slack automation message to say, Steve did a deployment to the live environment, those variables like user first name are there in the post request. This page here will walk you through adding the Asana Quicksilver example in detail, one for Jira and Trello as well. And when it comes time to troubleshoot your scripts, well, there's a terminus command for inspecting the logs of a given site, inspecting the logs of a given workflow ID. And ultimately, these scripts mostly are just plain PHP files. What makes them special is that they get these particular post requests when certain events happen. That's the TLDR.